It appears as though U.S. President Donald Trump is on the mend from the novel coronavirus. Now, to discuss this in more detail is one of our regular contributors, U.S. journalist Lisa Daftari, joining me once again from Los Angeles. Lisa, doctors say Trump's condition has been improving.
Depends who you ask, right, Hal? Look, this has been the biggest mystery, more of a mystery than where it came from, Wuhan, how it spread, how we got here. The US media is obsessed with this story and obsessed with digging deeper. I mean, to give them a little bit of justification for all of this, there were conflicting reports coming out from a leak from the White House and from the doctors. But since then, we had a complete briefing from the hospital with his entire team of doctors. We've had multiple tweets from the president himself saying that he is under observation and he's feeling fine. He even had a motorcade kind of driving parade sort of thing to say, "Look, I'm okay." He almost felt like people had to physically see him so that the rumors about how gravely ill he is can stop, but they have not stopped. Look, people are obsessed with this story. They kind of juxtapose this with his comments at the debate and his entire dealing with coronavirus and saying, well, he belittled it and now look what happened. There's a whole spectrum of commentary coming out of all kinds of people, celebrities and journalists alike. A lot of people saying awful things that you shouldn't say to your worst enemy, and a lot of people expressing a lot of sympathy for the president, his wife, and those at the White House and around the White House who have contracted the coronavirus. So we wish him and his wife a speedy recovery. We wish anybody who has this a speedy recovery, and hopefully we can put the politics aside and move forward.
A few media outlets have blasted Trump recently as he left the hospital with a security detail so he could ride around in an SUV past the supporters. He could wave to them as they're cheering him outside. Now, Trump was wearing a mask, but some argue he endangered his staff since he apparently still has the highly contagious coronavirus.
Obviously, this was okayed by his team of doctors, and before the White House makes any moves, the experts, doctors, all have to opine on this and his condition. I just feel like the president felt it was that important to physically show himself so that they don't get into again the rumors and that he is on a ventilator and that he needs oxygen and everything else. But of course, the criticism being that he put these people in danger by being in a restricted area with them.
Florida saw its fair share of COVID-19 cases, Lisa. Now the state's Governor Ron DeSantis says closing down school campuses in the spring as the pandemic began to surge may have been one of the nation's biggest health mistakes. How so?
A lot of people talk about the backlash of not putting children in school, and both for health reasons to build the immunity, and for psychological reasons. I mean, children need to be around other children. They need to have structure. They need to be in a school environment. It's just I see this among, young children. They're almost, becoming antisocial. They're becoming, they're getting cabin fever, being at home. And then you talk about the necessity of opening up society, of having that herd immunity. And that's where it starts with children who have a higher immunity towards this particular virus, and are able to fight it. I mean, the percentages are so incredibly low. Here in Los Angeles, where the schools are closed, there was a test done of the LAUSD, the school district, and they randomly selected an X number of students and teachers to test, and the test came back. I think it's like 0.01 or 0.02%. And those who had the virus were teachers. So, you check your temperature at the door. You don't come to school if you don't feel well. But the children were, almost entirely immune to this. So, look, we have the statistics. A lot of schools said will open in the second semester, which means after the election. And we are just in such a mess in this country. I think, it's interesting for me to hear from people outside this country, in Canada and Mexico and Europe and the Middle East, how they're viewing the US and how we're specifically dealing with this because it's an election year. Are we making the decisions that are best for, for students, for people running hair salons, for people who, have certain businesses that are now bankrupt and are, suicidal and in dire economic straits because of this. And I think it's very important to look at the complete picture. And unfortunately, it's very much tainted right now because we are in an election year.
The virus has taken a big bite of the Big Apple as well. New York City, once hit very hard by the novel coronavirus, Lisa, is looking at closing down some areas as the city is seeing a surge in cases.
Right. So New York City is ahead of the rest of the country. They basically had their surge with Europe, with countries like Italy, and now opened up and have a tiered system as to when to open up. And as the weather is getting cooler, they're going into fall. I think the restaurants can no longer function by being outside and events being outside and people social distancing and getting together outside. And those numbers are going up as society is opening up and people are going back to work and life. So now, as that percentage is increasing, they're looking at having another shutdown in order to prevent a second major surge to happen now in the fall and going towards the winter.
Circle back for just a moment talking about kids and the coronavirus, Lisa. A recent report from a medical center in Israel says that rushing young kids back to school is good since they're the most virus-proof citizens, but not so much for the middle schoolers and the high schoolers.
Right. Obviously, I mean, if the reports are true, and if it's true that young children have a higher immunity towards this virus, then as they get older, that immunity gets less, or it becomes compounded by their susceptibility to catch things like the common cold, the flu, et cetera. And as we go towards flu season, they can come home and again give that to parents and to siblings and things like that. We also run into the issue of young children that are in schools, if they should open up schools, having siblings that are making them sick or getting it from their grade or whatever you have. So it's a very complicated issue. I don't mean to belittle it whatsoever. But my only point is, and as we talked about this before, is that it's a much more complex issue than just a shutdown. I think it's very important to look at, again, the psychological issues, to talk about herd immunity. Whenever we do finally open up, when we open up the schools and we open up society fully, there will be more cases. And of course, we're not going to look at concerts and big weddings and big events for probably years to come, which is extremely upsetting. But I think that's just the science. That's just what it is. Politics aside, if a lot of people congregate, people will get this disease. So that's what we're looking at.
Lisa, Italy, which has seen almost 36,000 people die from COVID-19, is weighing whether or not they should introduce legislation requiring people to wear masks outdoors amid a steady 9-week increase in infections.
Yeah, we're looking at the same thing here in Los Angeles, and in a lot of areas that are, have a second surge going on, where people, if you're walking your dog and there's nobody in the vicinity, people want you to wear a mask. If you pass someone across the street and you're not wearing a mask, they give you the dirtiest look. You should be wearing a mask. You know, I think this all needs to be taken with a grain of salt. If you are within close proximity of other individuals, then you should be wearing a mask, regardless if it's indoors or outdoors. If you're breathing on each other, then you are exchanging perhaps, bodily fluids, and that's when this virus, kind of travels between people. That being said, I think people are going crazy again, one extreme and the other extreme, and either not wearing masks altogether, or even wearing masks while they're driving alone in their car with the windows up. So we're seeing a lot of that here. We're seeing that it kind of conflicts with a lot of reports. But again, just be smart about this, be logical about this, and let's just fight this together. It's awful.
Always wash your hands, right? That's vital too. Lisa, more than 220 people have died in the last week in Azerbaijan's second largest city, Ganja. It's being shelled by Armenian forces. Now, this war between the two former Soviet republics goes what, back to 1988?
Oh, it goes back, yes, exactly, until the end of the Cold War. And look, not only does it go back and we're looking at a historic fight between the two, you're having additional elements come in. So you have the interference of Turkey, for example. You have the interference of Azerbaijan calling in Turkey to bring in Syrian fighters. You have insurgents coming in. This is it's extremely compounded. It's extremely complex, and nobody's looking. I think that's the sad part here is that people aren't paying attention to this fight. This could turn into something much worse than it currently is. But again, fighting over occupied territory. It's in Azerbaijan. Armenia has occupied that land. People live there. People have lived there for years. They feel like it's their home, and something that people didn't expect or didn't know much about this area of the world.
The U.S. and Russia held a recent round of nuclear arms control talks in Finland, Lisa. Now, the talks were aimed at producing a new agreement to replace the new START treaty that expires in February. Now, the last remaining pact constraining the firepower of the world's two major nuclear powers.
Exactly. Every pact that has existed between Russia and the U.S. has expired and has not been revisited. And February would be the expiration of the last piece of paper that formally binds these two world powers to a nuclear treaty. Look. Things are very tense between the United States and Russia for many reasons. Right now, I think it's just a free for all for nations that are vying to be or exist as a world power, and those who are rogue enough to compete with them. So we're looking at North Korea and Venezuela and the Iranian regime as nations that are competing with world powers that are just trying to hold on. China, Russia, the United States. And you have a reshifting of world powers, a reshifting of world order. But I think the Russians and the U.S. will come back at it, even though we've had some provocation between the two. We've had jets shot down, and we've had drones flying into each other's airspace. But I think when it comes down to it, the two will formally have a pact between them so that they can focus on the rest of their actions in the region.
Now, still with Russia, the Russian ambassador says there's no problem with this country selling Iran with an advanced air defense system when the United Nations arms ban on the Islamic Republic expires on October 18th. That's kind of a scary thought.
Oh, it's a very scary thought, but are we surprised, Hal? No, we're not. Why? Because the Russians do what the Russians want to do. They basically are saying, what US sanctions against Iran? Once this expires, it's a free for all. And that's exactly what the US was worried about. Pompeo, every time he's come to the podium, and Donald Trump as well, they have expressed, and Nikki Haley, when she was at the UN, I have to give credit to her as well, have always brought up the fact that once there's a sunset clause on weapons to Iran, everyone will want to get involved. Everyone will want to take advantage of the economy of selling weapons to Iran, who will gladly try to purchase them, which is why it's so important to use the snapback clause and to snap back the sanctions against a regime that has not behaved. They have moved forward with their nuclear program. They have gone against all types of human rights violations, and they continue to march forward with more nuclear material and to go against everything that was in the nuclear deal to begin with. So it's very important, particularly for Europe, to double down and to join the U.S. in sanctioning Iran for this particular reason.
Now, Lisa, before I let you go, can you give me a bit of an update as to the wildfire situation where you are? Recent report we had in Bridge City News was over 4 million acres have burned in California. 31 people tragically died and thousands of people evacuated from their homes.
Yes, this is horrific. Yeah, I think it was just a couple days ago, I got an alert on my phone that we did reach a record-breaking number of acres that have burned. Here in Southern California, even though my weather app says bad air quality for sensitive groups, which it is a good warning to heed to, but it's mostly in Northern California. Unfortunately, we're looking at the vineyards, we're looking at the areas surrounding Napa. I mean, it's horrible, and it's not just California. We're looking at Oregon and Washington State as well. the bad air quality, people getting removed from their homes, people losing their homes, people losing their properties, and of course, these businesses that have been so brutally battered by COVID and the current economy and the state of the country, and now this. So they've been dealt a very, very, very tough hand this year. I know many people are looking to the calendar and can't wait for 2021 because it's been a tough one. And, we are thinking of all the people that are in harm's way and hope that these fires can be contained very, very soon.
Amen. Our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari, joining me once again from Los Angeles. Lisa, stay safe.
Too. Thank you.